This is the story of Abram and Lot. And a lot of people say, well, there was no such guy as Abram. Yes, there was. His name got changed to Abraham, but his name originally was Abram. He was the older brother of Lot. And when people hear this story, they automatically think of Sodom and Gomorrah, and they say, oh, go rush out to Genesis chapter 19. It's got it all covered. Whoa! You need to go back to Genesis chapter 13. You say, wait a minute. The story of Abram and Lot really begins in Genesis chapter 13? Yes. This is one of the classic situations where a very powerful lesson was lost to all iniquity because people were focused on Sodom and Gomorrah and they weren't really focused on Abram and Lot. Alright. Abram's the older brother. Lot's the younger brother. They both have come out of the land of Egypt and they're in the town of Bethel. And there really wasn't a whole lot of land out there for both of them. And Lot had these herdsmen, and Abram had these herdsmen, and they raised sheep, and I'm sure they probably had cattle and other kinds of livestock. And these herdsmen were fighting amongst each other, saying, hey, you know, I want this, and the other guys were like, oh, I want this, so on and so forth. Well, Abram got Lot by himself, and Abram says, look, I know I'm the older brother, and by tradition, I have all the rights to all the land, so on and so forth, because as the oldest brother, I get everything, okay? But he says, listen, I know my father gave me everything in the world, and you can't hardly make any decisions, but this time I'm going to let you make the decision. He says, there are two lands. One's called Jordan, and the other one's called Canaan. And whichever one you choose to live in, I'll go in the opposite direction, and I'll live in the other land. Wow, this thrilled Lot because he thought, man, I'll never be able to make decisions for myself, much less any of my family. So he's like, oh, this is cool. So he looks out to Jordan. He sees a utopia out there. There are crops. There are people. It's just like a Garden of Eden out there. He's like, wow, this is great. He takes a look at Canaan and he sees nothing but a barren wasteland. And Lot says, hey, you know what? I'm going to go to Jordan, and I'm going to live out there, and you can have your little Canaan. Abram says, fine. So Lot immediately goes out to Jordan, and he goes out, and he lands himself near the city of Sodom. Well, Abram, he said, okay, so he goes out to Canaan, he looks at this barren wasteland, and he looks up to God, and he says, well, what's the deal? And God comes down, and he says, look, he says, I want you to look north, south, east, and west. As far as your eyes can see, I know this doesn't look like much right now, but this whole land is now yours, and will be yours and your descendants forever and forever. And this is where the Israeli-Arab conflict really began, right here at that point. Okay? Now, I'm not going to get into that. I'm just going to say that that's where it began. If you want to know where the Israeli-Arab debate came into play, there you have it, right then and there. As a matter of fact, Abram's name was changed to Abraham to mean the father of all nations. And there you have it. The complete story of how Abraham got a hold of the land of Canaan. Alright, so what's the moral of this story? Why is this just as important, if not more important, than Sodom and Gomorrah? Here's the moral. Sometimes people choose things that look good, but really aren't good. Just like drugs. Some people choose to do drugs. It looks good, it feels good, but in the end, it can kill you. It doesn't always kill you, but it can. Some people choose tobacco. They end up losing parts of their body or even losing their life over it. Some people consume way too much alcohol. They end up losing their liver or even their life. Just because something looks good doesn't mean you should be pursuing it. Because I'll tell you what, you eat enough sugared everything under the sun, you could end up having your teeth rot out, you could end up with diabetes, and you could die. Now, does that mean the sugar itself is bad? No. It just means that you become a glutton on sugar, you can pay the price. Again, like I said, just because something looks good doesn't mean it is good. And this is a lesson that was completely missed in the Sodom and Gomorrah story. I know some Christians picked this up, but a majority of them have not, because some of them haven't even heard this story. And for the ones that did, they didn't emphasize this part of the story. No, we had to go emphasize the next part. Now, I will cover the next part in the next video. So, remember, if something looks good, it doesn't necessarily mean it is good. And you need to watch out for that. And that's the moral of this story. Alright, I will tell you more. Before I do, though, I will say, if Lot had not gone to Sodom and Gomorrah in the first place, those towns may have been stoned and nobody would have ever known about it. Why? Because without Lot being involved, there would have been no reason for it to have ever been written in the Bible. Now, I'm sure God would have written something else, but to say that Sodom and Gomorrah would have ever been in the Bible if Lot hadn't shown up, well, I don't think it would have. The mere fact that Lot was there is why it was in the Bible. Otherwise, it would have been just some kind of an ancient rumor, and nobody would have ever known the difference. Alright, I will tell you more in my next video. Stay tuned.